I'm here with Noodles and with Mandy, and today we're going to be looking at the Hello Rainbow Crochet Kit. There's 7 different patterns on there. You get everything you need in the kit.
You do. You've got 7 patterns, 7 projects, 7 balls of yarn, crochet hook, stuffing, yarn for the face. So
and I'm going to be able to do it.
You will be once I've shown you how to do the chain and the double crochet, and then the rest will be easy.
Let's hope so. Let's give it a go.
Well, I'm going to start off with the magic ring or adjustable slip knot. It's one of the same really, and your working yarn comes from your skein, and your tail of yarn is what's left, the end of it. You hold the tail in your left hand and you wrap it around your finger so you've got 2 strands at the top, and then you hold it between your thumb and your middle finger. You bring this first strand over towards your nail and hold it there, and then you bring this one over and off. You then pull those 2, and that is your first stitch, and it adjusts by using the tail to your stitch. If it doesn't adjust with the tail and adjusts with the working yarn, then you've got to start again, because it will not tighten up the hole that you'd be left with. And from this point, holding the yarn and the stitches and everything else, I hold it here with the thumb grip, this flat piece here, and then my left hand goes up under the yarn and my middle finger and thumb holds that knot, so to speak, so you can let go. And all you do here is move the hook up and down. All your tension and everything else is done with your left hand. If you want to, you can wind it through your fingers. So from this point, to make your first chain, is you're going over the hook and pulling it through. I then push the hook right up so that the stitch comes down to this thumb grip, and I hold it with my index finger. I then move this one, which brings the yarn through your hand, and you go over again. I then move my middle finger and thumb up towards the hook again to stop this stitch moving, and I bring that one through. Back to the thumb grip, hold it, yarn over, finger and thumb up, pull it through. You have to be careful to make sure that your chain stays the same way, so all your V stitches, as they are facing forward. If you twist this and do a few stitches and then you come back and do a few more, you won't be able to get a solid chain at the front. You'll have some of the back of the stitch, some of the front of the stitch, and you won't be able to do your first row correctly. So I'm just going to take those few undone so I can carry on. And for this wristband you need 31 stitches, so I'm going to count what I've done, and again it's just counting those V stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the more you practice this, the easier it gets and the more even your tension will become. I'm doing this quite loosely because I'll need that for starting the next row. Now I've lost count, so I'm going to count them again. 3, 4, 5, 6, 15, 16, 17, 23, 24, 25, 26, 28, 29, 30, 31. You need that odd one because that's classed as your turning chain. I want the wristband to be 30 stitches long, and it's like building a brick wall. You need an edge to start your next row of bricks, so you never work into the first stitch from the hook. That is your turning chain for the double crochet stitch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn the chain over and work from the back, because it's a lot easier to see where you're picking up the stitches, because it has a spine of straight stitches, because each stitch is made up of 3 strands. So you have a left side, a right side, and the spine in the middle. This straight stitch is what we're going to pick up to start your work. So like I say, your first one is right next to the hook, but we don't want to use that one because that's our turning chain. So the next one is here, and we're just going to pop the hook in from bottom to top. We're going to engage the yarn by putting it over the hook, pulling it through. I'm going to bring it back, hold it, move my hand so the thumb and finger comes up to hold that stitch so it doesn't go anywhere. So when I move this, the stitch stays the same. Then we go and yarn over and we're pulling it through. And that is actually your double crochet stitch done. We'll just do that all the way along. So your next straight stitch is there. So we go from the bottom up, engaging it, pulling it through, bringing it down towards the thumb grip, holding it. So I can then move this hand up to hold the stitches. Then we go and yarn over, pulling it through. Don't worry about bits like this, that'll all even out once you've done the whole row. Bottom up, bring it through, hold it by the thumb grip, over and through. Doing it this way, not only is it easier, but it gives you a much better edge. So this is the top edge, which is almost like a cast off edge, but then when you turn it over, you've still got that edge here at the bottom. So the top of the bracelet is going to look the same as the bottom. If you don't go into the back of the stitches and you decide just to take the top of the V's, you can be left with a lot of unevenness and holes, and you can do 2 in 1 stitch accidentally, and you might not end up with your 30 stitches. And I do suggest as a beginner you do count the right amount of stitches at the end of every row. There's nothing worse than doing 10 rows only to find out that you've ended up with 28 stitches rather than 30, and then you have to pull it undone. This is the fiddliest part of any crochet, starting in a row, just picking up these stitches, but once this is done, the rest is really easy, because now you've done the double crochet stitch, because that's what you're doing now. Just bringing it through. If you can't actually see the straight line because it's perhaps tightened somehow, you literally just give it a bit of a wiggle, it pops up there, and that's where you're going to pick up the stitch. This is the longest it's ever taken me to do 30 stitches. Oops. Nearly there, we're over halfway. You can see the edges now, they almost look identical. The only way you know that that is the right side is because your stitches look like little V's, and also your tail end is always to the left. if you're left-handed, then I would try doing it this way first, because it's the left hand that actually controls your tension, your yarn, how you're holding it. All your right hand does is this. It's just push the hook to where you want it to go. So once that's in there, everything else is done left hand. All this. And then just the last one there. So that's your first row done. And you would fasten off this row for the wristband. Just snip this yarn off, and you don't pull that through. You actually have to work sort of half a stitch again by going over the hook and then pulling it straight through, and that tightens off your stitch. So that's your first row done. To join the next colour, I'm taking the blue, and I'm just going to do my slip knot again. And all I'm going to do is keep the right side facing me, so because I'm right-handed, my ends are to the left, and your turning chain is here, so I'm going to go into that first one, and I'm literally just going to pull that yarn through and through the one on the hook. So it's almost like you're just doing a chain to attach that yarn, and that would be your turning chain, your first brick. Then I'm going into that stitch again to do the double crochet, bringing it through, over, through the two. Now, because we've done the chain, what we're going to go through here is we're actually going to go through both of those sides of that V stitch. So 1, 2, we're going to pick up them both there, we're going to bring it through, over your hook and through the 2 stitches, and that is your double crochet through the 2 on the top, pull it through, over, done. In your stitch, engage the yarn and pull it through, over the hook, pull it through the 2. I always go under the yarn, so you're actually pulling, the hook goes under, the yarn comes over. And again, you just do that all the way along. Fasten off in the same way. It will automatically curl like this. I don't really know why, but it does straighten up once you do more rows. And obviously the more times you do it, the more you practice, the easier and quicker it gets. Okay, I'm just going to fasten off, and then I'll count this row to make sure we've still got the 30 stitches, so I can show you how to do that. So I finished that last double crochet. I'm going to cut my yarn, and then I'm not just going to pull it through, I'm going to go over the hook and pull it through. Tighten it. Now all you do to count your stitches is count those V's along the top. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 20, 30. The last one there where we joined it at the beginning is your 30. So now I'm just going to go ahead and join the next blue. I might change my mind and do the green because I can't find my blue. Want me to use this one? Okay, so my main ends are on my left. I'm going to do my slip knot again. Over and off. Tighten it with the end in that first stitch. Made it into a chain for your turning block and through. Now you can, if you want to, leave the ends so that they're tassels and decorative item for your bracelet, or if you want to tuck them in as you crochet along rather than sewing them in, you just hold it to the back. So as you're going through that stitch, you've got the extra yarn here and you crochet over it. So then that hides the yarn end as you go along. So less sewing. I've probably done it enough now so you can't see. I'll just snip that off at the end. So that's one less job to do. Still going in both stitches of the V. If you only go in one, it's going to cause a loop, a hole. If you go in the back one, you get left with a line of stitches in the front, which is a totally different technique. So just make sure you go into both of those. When I say about how the left hand controls your yarn tension, as I'm grabbing it here, my finger comes down to release the yarn there, but then my finger comes back up automatically to get it ready for the next yarn over. Comes down. So that's what pulls the yarn through your fingers and from the skein. Try not to pull it after you've done the stitch, because this is what will happen if you pull it. Your stitch is going to be so tiny and so tight you won't be able to use them on the next row. So I'm going to unpull those. It's as easy as that. Just try and keep my tension nice and free flowing. If it's too loose, then it's going to look like this. It's going to get a little bit untidy. So then you could just wrap it round your fingers so that it comes all the way through, and that will help adjust your tension that way. Okay, so that's your third row done. Still curling. Now you can see it's taking shape. Fasten off.
So just show us on yours when it's finished.
Okay. So when it's finished and you've done one row of every colour, you then add your hairband to give it that little bit of stretch and different sizes, so it's thicker wrists, And all you would do is you just pop your hairband on the end, fold it over, and just sew it in place so long as you're not catching your band, so that that still moves. And then you do the same with this hand without twisting it, and then you'd have your, you can see where I've sewn it down here, and that's it. You could actually use that to tie your hair with, actually. There we are.